Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast. And before we get into today's episode, we want to just take a couple of minutes. Usually, we'd give shout out to sponsors, but this season, we want to use our podcast as a platform to raise awareness and shine a light on organisations who are doing amazing work and deserve more respect for what they do. So on today's episode, we want to give a shout out to the Nina for Life Foundation.
Nina for Life Suicide Awareness is a group that's based in Kingswood in Tallaght and is near and dear to our hearts. We had Jane and Pat from Nina on the podcast back in season 1, where they spoke about the group and the work that they do in raising awareness for suicide and mental health. But like with all organisations, they need support and funding wherever they can get it. We're going to link everything below for Nina in terms of their Instagram and their Facebook page so you can see the work that they do. And if you feel compelled to do so, there's also going to be a link to a GoFundMe where you can donate to the cause and help them to keep on doing the great work that they do. Welcome back to the Molloy Twins Podcast. And today we're delighted to be joined by Martha Donnelly. You might know her as Mindset with Martha. She's working to bridge the gap between mindset and fitness. And she's worked with professional athletes such as Shauna Bannon and Shauna O'Keefe. Martha, thanks for coming in today.
Thanks very much for having me, lads.
You're more than welcome. You didn't have to travel too far either.
No, literally just up from Walkinstown.
It's a nice change, and we love to start off with quick fires, just to kind of get the mind thinking and get us moving in the right direction. My first quick fire question for you: what's one thing you do every day to help yourself get in the right mindset?
First thing I do is I get up and make my bed every morning without fail. Up, make the bed, out the door, 10-15 minute walk, and get that sunlight straight away. Before I have a coffee, I always have a glass of water as well.
Okay.
So they're like first 3 things that I do every day.
Make the bed, get some sunlight, have some water.
Yeah.
Okay, nice.
Yeah.
This might be a weird quick fire question, but just having a little bit of experience in the industry, do you find it hard to explain to people what you do?
Yeah, 100%. Because I suppose with what I do, a lot of people feel like, you know, they have everything when it comes to fitness. You know, like, all I need to do to make a change is have my fitness in order, like my steps every day, or you know, my training every week. But you have to train the mind just as much as you train the body. Your brain is a muscle too, so you have to train that just like you train every other muscle part. So I always say that to people I'm speaking to, my clients, like, your mind is what's going to be there for life.
Yeah.
You know, we can't tell the future, like, touch wood, but like, if anything ever happens physically, your mind is always going to be there for you. So you have to train that as well, you know.
Mm-hmm. Great answer. This is probably also a bit of a weird question, but I know I've listed already Shauna Bannon and Shauna O'Keefe. Is there any other athletes out there in the world that you look at and you're like, I would love to work with that person?
Francis Ngannou. Dillian White.
Oh yeah?
Interesting one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They'd be 2, definitely.
What about those
Katie
two?
Taylor as well.
Yeah,
Katie Taylor.
What about Francis and Dillian? Do you find appealing?
So Dillian White is a boxer I've been watching for years. I find him very resilient, like incredibly resilient. Would love to have a chat with him and get to know him more as well. But I feel like there's always areas there that you can tweak with mindset. With Francis Ngannou, his story is incredible.
Yeah.
Absolutely incredible. And I think he's on Diary of a CEO actually this week
Yeah,
as well.
yeah, he was.
Yeah. That's why we couldn't get him.
Oh, he's busy.
He's double booked. Yeah.
But I'd love to learn, it's more so learn more about their mindset and how they remain resilient, disciplined, relentless as well. And with Katie Taylor, obviously, like, everyone loves Katie Taylor.
Yeah.
I definitely love to work with her too.
Nice. Sick. Do you have any books that you love to read around mindset that you'd recommend?
Yeah, so there's quite a few of them. So the first one would be Mind Control Method by Jose Silva. That's great to do with visualization, great to do with learning about the different brain waves, brain frequencies, and what music works best when you're trying to focus, so that deep focus, whether it's like internal or external focus. So there's a lot of methods in there that I teach my clients when I'm working with them as well, and myself. Like, it's an incredible book. Another one then would be probably The Diary of a CEO book by Stephen
Oh, yeah?
Bartlett. There's a lot of elements in that to do with business. So if you're a business owner, a CEO, like there's a lot in there because he's interviewed so many people. So there's a lot of elements in there that would be like you could learn so much from what's in those chapters as well. Like I've taken pen and like post-its and I've put things into each chapter when you're learning from, like you'd learn from other people interviewing other people as well. So yeah, definitely those two.
Sick.
Nice. What was the name of the first book again?
Mind Control Method.
Mind Control
Jose
Method.
Silva, yeah.
And Diary of a CEO. Okay. Add them to the Amazon list.
Yeah.
My last quick fire for you. I know you've worked with a lot of athletes over the years. I don't even know what the best way to phrase this is because I know each of them you have your own kind of personal relationship with. But is there any like standout moment for you that you can think of when you've been working with somebody and you've seen them achieve something or overcome a certain belief or limitation where like it has reinforced for you the fact that what you do works?
These are good questions. Yeah, when I work with clients, I always know that they've taken on board what I've said to them when they come back to a session, and I can see straight away the difference. So every week, my clients will get a feedback form, which is basically just like following up on them from their previous session with me, like, how's your stress this week? How's your anxiety? Are you feeling overwhelmed? Is there anything I can help you with? The responses to those are always like deep and honest with every client. And it's always, you can tell straight away in their answers what's working and what they're taking on board. It's never a one size fits all with clients that I work with. Like there's there's some coaches that might have kind of a one kind of framework that they use for everyone. With me, it's you come to me, I have the bones of my program, and then we work it around the client because every athlete is different, every mindset is different. There's no human being on the planet that's the same. We're all wired completely differently, and yeah, that's based. Like you always know if they've taken on board what you've said when they come back to a session and they're like their energy is different with you. The way they're speaking to you is different. You can tell, like I don't just listen to someone, I read their body language, their facial expressions, their energy, and you can tell that their energy is high vibrational rather than low when they're chatting to me. So I can always tell from that if they've taken on board everything that I've said as well.
I feel very paranoid now about how I'm sitting there.
I'm reading you both.
I have a two-part or final question for you on this. When it comes to improving your mindset, is there anything you think in the mindset industry, let's call it, that's overhyped and anything that's underrated?
Underrated would be that there's a massive gap between mindset and fitness. Like what I've seen with coaches is that they would take on the role of a mindset coach and a fitness coach in one. What I've noticed with coaches who've worked with me is that they've done that and they've taken that to a certain level, but they're like they can only take it so far based on their own experience with mindset. So I suppose underrated would be that there is a gap there to be filled with mindset coaches and mental fitness experts to come in and help clients with self-sabotaging behaviours, that all or nothing mindset, those limiting beliefs that they've held on to all their life. You know, why are they feeling like when they start a fitness program that they're, able to last 2, 3, 4 weeks and then they're like throwing the towel in, and then blaming themselves and then feeling down on themselves because they had to do that. But we all, everyone has negative thoughts. Everyone has gone through all or nothing mindset, procrastination, feeling like you can't take the next step. And it's just the minor tweaks to get you from A to B. And that's where I want to come in and fill that gap. Like I'm so passionate about like helping people. When I see that change in people, I like, it makes me feel happy about it as well. But like just seeing that change in people I'm working with. So the underrated, definitely just there is a gap to be filled and just making sure that you're filling it. Like, your business, it increases retention for businesses as well, Oh, sorry, the second question was what?
Overrated. That's overrated, overhyped.
Overrated, yeah. Overrated. I don't actually really know. to be honest.
Any technique that you see like people online are always saying, oh, everybody needs to do this, and from your experience it's just like not that useful?
I suppose with fitness, like you see, I suppose the same reels going out all the time.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot of that, and it's kind of like, oh, have this food and you'll feel this way, and like do this and you'll feel this.
Oh yeah.
It's really very, very simple. Like the simplest tweaks is going to make the biggest change. Like getting up in the morning, as I said, and making your bed in the morning, you'll notice a massive difference just doing that every day. Getting out and getting your 10 minutes of sunlight in the morning, you're going to notice a massive difference from that. Having a glass of water before your caffeine in the morning, massive difference in yourself from that alone. Not doom scrolling every day on Instagram and TikTok, and avoiding tasks that you know that you need to get done. You like a lot of people spend time like so much time on social media, and when I did my my research project for my master's, I focused on human behavior and social comparison, specifically with Instagram, and it was during COVID as well. So obviously when we couldn't leave our house, we're on our phones all the time, we're scrolling. Everyone's energy during that time period, from the research that I did, was so low vibrational because you were consuming absolutely everything that was online between media and what people were putting up on their social media. So if you're consuming that every single day, right, especially first thing in the morning, because when you wake up in the morning, you're coming out of your it's a brain frequency called beta state. So when you're waking up in the morning, you're coming out of that. The worst thing for you is going straight on your phone and scrolling. Because if you do that first thing in the morning every day, you're more likely then, it's been proven through studies that you're more likely then to pick up your phone multiple times throughout the day and scroll. Right, so if you find that you're a scroller, right, all the time throughout the day, have a think, do you pick up your phone first thing when you get up in the morning? So you're lying in bed, you've turned off your alarm and you're scrolling for about 5-10 minutes, and then you get up.
Yeah.
It consumes your energy. You want to save that energy. So that's why you're up, make your bed first thing out the door.
That's an impressive answer. Yeah. Can I ask you, maybe it's a silly question, but it's something that I think a lot of people, and myself included, I've heard a lot about it, but I don't really know what it means. Low vibrational and high vibrational.
Yeah. So if you're in a low vibrational state, you're just feeling quite stressed, you're quite anxious, you're quite overwhelmed, kind of everything gets to you. Like the smallest thing that someone says could get to you. Mm-hmm. If you're not feeling very grateful for things, you're not really thinking about your surroundings, what you need to change about yourself, then your high vibrational is that you're feeling you've more energy, you're more upbeat. You notice it straight away in someone when you meet them. They're like, they're happy, they're chirpy, you know, they're not feeling overwhelmed. There might be things happening in their life, but they're dealing with it in you know, the right ways. So that's kind of the difference between the low and the high vibrational state, is that if someone is in a low vibrational state, right, how can we get you feeling a higher vibrational state? How can we, whatever's happening in your life right now, how can we get you feeling better about that, right? We can't control everything, right? If we could control everything, like, you know, we'd be superpowers. But you have to manage what's happening in your life currently in a certain way. So putting in the time to manage that and fixing that correctly is really important.
And is that, like, if I'm low vibrational now, in the next 10 minutes, could I move to high vibrational? Like, does it chop and change throughout the day, or is it like a more long-term sort of thing?
So let's talk, so if we were talking about low vibration with stress and anxiety, right? So stress is short term. So let's say there was something happening in your life currently, whether it's like something's happening in your job or a relationship or with your training, you're not happy with your training and you're feeling quite stressed about that. Mm-hmm. So it's short term. The minute that issue that you're stressed about is resolved, straight away you notice you've moved high vibration, right? So depending on how quickly you can change how you're thinking about that situation in your mind will depend on how quickly you can move from low to high vibrational state. With anxiety, it's lingering. So with anxiety, it's to do with worry and fear. So you can be stressed and anxious about the same thing, but once the stress is resolved with that one particular issue, your worry and fear can then transfer to something else.
Yeah,
You start
yeah.
worrying about something else, right?
Yeah.
Because we have over 60,000 thoughts a day, right? So you just have to, I always say, right, your subconscious is like a lot of ball machine, right? Those thoughts are going around, just the next one has to come up, right?
Yeah,
And that's straight into your conscious. You're now consciously aware of this thought. You're worrying about it. You're stressing over it, right? Your anxiety then will start to fear and worry about that particular situation, right? And that's how it transfers. So your anxiety can be transferable, or you're worrying about multiple things,
Right.
right? So that's the difference with them. So how we manage that is, well, how can we implement tools and techniques into your life currently where no matter what happens in your life, you can manage that. You can change your thought processes around it. You cannot be fearful about your future because you know that no matter what, you're in full control of how you're going to confront that when it happens. And that's what I like to do with athletes specifically as well, is that you can visualize your fight day, or your match on the day, for example, and you can visualize that till the cows come home.
Yeah.
But you don't know what could actually happen when you get there.
Yeah.
So you have to prepare for the success that's going to happen in there, and also prepare for what you weren't
Expecting or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So look at the failures, prepare for success, prepare for failure, and you'll never lose. And that's what I like to do with my clients, is that you prepare for both always.
That should be your Instagram bio. Prepare for success, prepare for failure, you'll never lose.
That's interesting. I don't disagree with it, but I know some people on the internet, there's always someone say, oh, why would you prepare for failure? Like, should you not just
setting yourself
focus
up
on
for it?
should you not just think of like the positives and that? Why is it so important to look at both?
Being positive is really important, but we're all human. Like anything could happen. Like absolutely anything. Grief happens to everyone. Situations happen in people's life that you weren't expecting. Relationship breakups. Your current environment just literally being turned upside down, and you have to prepare for those things. You can be positive about, you can remain positive in your day to day, but you have to be prepared for situations that you weren't expecting. And when you prepare for them, not even just prepare for them, not say, okay, well, I'm going to prepare for, but just having tools in place where you know that you've got a bulletproof mindset. You've got those tools, you've got those techniques there. Be true to yourself. Know, okay, well, I can't control absolutely everything in my life, but when this happens, I'm gonna be set and prepared for when that happens.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. I wanted to ask you, Martha, because I was looking, obviously trying to do a bit of background research and stuff like that, as we professionally do. But something stuck out for me is you mentioned that in your own life, you've seen things completely do a 180 based on the stuff that you now teach the clients and help them to overcome. I was just curious to know, what was life like for Martha before you developed these tools and techniques for yourself, and what's been the changes you've noticed yourself personally?
Yeah. So I suppose when I finished school, I went into nursing. So I always had a huge interest in wanting to help people. I knew that I wanted to help people, so I went straight into nursing.
Okay.
From that, then there was modules in my nursing where it was to do with brain behaviors, and I wanted to learn more about the mind. So we learned so much about a patient's physical self, but I wanted to learn more about the mind. And from that, then I went into psychology. Now I always had a deep interest in the mind and the brain, because my dad was in the guards, my uncles were guards, my granddad was in the guards, detectives, and I always kind of had a big interest in all of that as well, and how people's minds work. And when I went into psychology, when I was learning the modules year on, it was 4 years in total in the degree stage, I was learning so much about myself whilst also learning about how to help others. So I was learning about self-sabotage, kind of anxiety and stress and overwhelm, because everyone has felt stress and overwhelm. We've feared situations, we've worried about things, we've been oh, what if this happens and what if that happens? And, of course I had those thoughts as well, But what I was learning about myself was, how can I switch my mind? How can I switch how I'm thinking so that it doesn't consume me? if you let your worries consume you, like you'll go down a rabbit hole. You have to know how to get yourself back out of there. So did the psychology for the 4 years, went in to do my master's then in Carlow. So I did data science. I used the data science, I used Python to do my research project on human behaviour, self-esteem, and then social comparison. And that's when I was doing that study during COVID to basically learn about how social comparison impacted our self-esteem and how people's behaviours online on social media were impacting other people's mindsets. So from there then I went into doing cognitive behavioural therapy. So I learned more about how our thoughts, our feelings and our emotions, like how they impact different people differently. And then I went into doing mindset coaching. So I did my coaching qualification with the International Coaching Federation then after that. And during one of my years of my degree, I did counselling psychology for 5 months. So instead of having a summer, I went straight into that.
Nice.
I went into my 4th year. Because I just, like, all throughout that, I was learning so much about myself. When you learn how to help others, you're learning so much about yourself as well. On a deeper level, when I was joining fitness programs, and like I first entered the gym when I was 16. And this is what got me into kind of learning not just about mindset, but like how to bridge that gap between mindset and fitness, was that I had great coaches, but I found that I would start a fitness program and, it'd be 12 PT sessions. I'd get as far as maybe number 7, 8 if I was lucky. Yeah. And I remember texting my PT saying, and I paid up front, I remember texting my PT and saying, I had a flu and like I couldn't come back and you can keep the money. That was it. Like, I didn't have flu. I just had this deep, like, self-sabotage of just, I'd had this all or nothing mindset where I fucked up the nutrition, right? Like, I wanted my, Chinese on a Friday night or whatever.
Yes.
And I wanted to go out and enjoy my social life with my friends, and this was taking me away from that. So I threw the towel in and I quit. But I still wanted to do the plan. Like, I still, like, one part of my mind was like, I want to go out and enjoy my time with my friends, and I want to have my Chinese at the weekend with my boyfriend, and I want to, like, go out and whatever. And then the other part of my mind was like, I feel so driven to want to work out and be fit. So, like, where do we bridge the gap there? Like, how can we have both? And how can, like, I had limiting beliefs about myself, my self-esteem, like, like, it's just, I was learning so much doing the psychology about myself, and then I implemented those techniques into what was happening in my life at that point. And everyone has gone through this. Yeah. Like, there's not one person out there who said, I never went through any of that. Yeah. Like, we've all gone through it. And, like, one thing I also feel is that, like, mindset coaching should be like an element of like 4th year in school. 100%. Like, I remember I was doing Japanese in 4th year in school, and I haven't spoken Japanese since.
Like, you're in for a surprise later. We have something planned with it.
But it really should be an element in school, like mental health, just even psychology, mindset coaching should be there in schools, because that's when people need it most. Like, you're expecting people who are 17, 18 to leave school and know exactly how to navigate life when they leave. To know exactly what they want to do when they go into college. Yeah. To, like, your 20s and your 30s, like, you're going to come across different situations that you're just not prepared for when you leave school. But if you have tools and techniques in place that you've learned, you're going to be able to face them from a different perspective. Perspective is everything. So yeah, I and any teachers listening to this, if you want to book me for a talk in your school.
Will you give the talk in Japanese?
Yeah. Is that a selling point?
Yeah, I think so. I have so many questions. First of all, just out of curiosity, talk to me a little bit about the research that you've done in terms of like social comparison. What I'm sure most people can probably jump to the conclusion that using so much social media isn't good for you. Yeah. But in terms of like the hard data, what did you come across, and was there anything that was surprising or interesting?
Men actually compare themselves more to people online than women do.
Oh yeah?
Yeah. But you'd think the opposite.
Yeah, for sure.
That was one interesting thing that I found. And the samples that I used were 50-50.
Okay.
So it wasn't just like one was higher
Was
than
it a
the other.
mixture of ages, or is it more in?
It was more the 20s to 35. Yeah, so it was
Interesting,
more this age group. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. You know, like I suppose women like love talk therapy, and they want to talk things out. Men, you might notice yourselves, I don't know, like might hold it in more, might be less likely to want to talk it out. But that's one interesting thing that I found.
What were they comparing? I'm guessing a lot of it was like appearance and stuff. Was there anything aside from that men would tend to compare themselves?
It wasn't like particular questions about who they would
Okay.
compare themselves to. It was more just like, do you find that you compare yourself to people online? And the answers that came back were more yes from men than they were from women, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
But one thing with that as well, with social media, is that like we have no idea what the person we're comparing ourselves to has actually gone through in their lives.
Yeah.
And it could have taken them years to get where they are. They could have had these stop-start moments throughout their fitness journey, their career, and we're comparing ourselves now to their version of themselves now that could have taken them years, and they could have had ups and downs throughout that. So always compare yourself to yourself. Like I always say that, like, compare yourself to yourself. Always compare yourself to yourself. Last month, last year, 5 years ago. You know, never compare yourself to anyone else, because you have zero idea what they've been through.
Great answer.
Big time. Do you know, and I'm sure there's tons of reasons why, but why is it you think that it's almost like a natural thing where we are so prone to comparing ourselves to others? What does that, where does it come from?
It comes from I suppose a deep, trying to think of the best answer for this one. That's a good question.
So I'll clip out the time where you were thinking.
Yeah, like it comes from not feeling happy in yourself. So if you're not happy with yourself, then you're going to compare yourself to someone else who you think is happy. And if you're going through a situation at that very moment and you're in, as I was saying, like this low vibrational state where you're stressed and you're worrying about a situation you're going through, you're scrolling on social media, seeing these people put out only their best moments, and you're comparing yourself now to that. And that's why I always say block out the noise and only compare yourself to yourself. How can you get yourself in this moment out of where you are and bridge that gap to where you want to be? People who put up, you know, reels and videos online of their best moments are not showing the bad days, you know, and like to remember that too. I'm probably saying way too much now, but like
no, not at all.
But yeah, like not to compare yourself to everyone's good moments on social
best
media,
bits
like
online and all that crack.
Yeah.
That's a good point. The another thing you mentioned there that I've like been kind of not obsessed, but it's been, I've done counselling for a long time, and a lot of the conversations came back to like negative core beliefs and self-limiting beliefs, and like one part of me kind of always, like conceptually I could grasp what they were talking about. Like, okay, deep down within me I have this belief about something which impacts my perspective on me and everything that I'm capable of, but then like in a realistic way I was like, well, I don't know how to change that. Like that's just buried within me. Can you talk to me a little bit about limiting beliefs, where they come from, and what kind of tools exist to help people overcome them?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that as well.
No, you're welcome. I spent enough money learning that about myself. So.
Can I ask a question to kind of go on top of Lee's question as well?
Yeah.
Like, how much control do we actually have over our minds? Like, how much of it is like, all right, that's just the mindset I have, I just have to learn to deal with that, versus how much could we actually do something to change it or make it better?
So they're both really good questions. So I have a lot here. So your beliefs stem from multiple situations that you've gone through in your life, from literally like the age of 3, 4, 5, all the way up to now. And the way you can vision this is if you imagine a wall, and every situation you've been through is a brick on that wall. So every time you have a situation where you feel like, you know, your confidence is knocked, your self-esteem dipped, you know, it could be anything to do with school situations, bullying in school, like relationships again, work environments, you know, home environments. You've added another brick to that wall until that wall is up here.
Yeah,
Like, and now what we have to do is we have to work on how we're going to take every single brick off that wall, and we're going to work through it, but we're going to work from the deeper stuff. So what I do with clients is I ask really deep questions, and these are questions that you would have avoided asking yourself your whole life. Questions to do with, like, what's one memory you have from way back where you feel like, you know, the first time your confidence might have been knocked. And we go right back to that, because that's going to be a core memory for you. And we work on building that, right? How can we work on that belief that you have about yourself? So if you imagine that brick wall and like all those bricks are a situation in your life, we just work on taking every brick down until you can see straight past it.
Okay.
You might have to repeat your question again.
You kind of answered it, because it was building on Lee's. I was asking how much control do we actually have over our mindsets as a whole. And I think some people probably just feel like, oh, let's say there's someone who's always in a bad mood. It's like, oh, that's just the way I am, you know, can't change that. I was like, is there an element of, yeah, that's what you were born with? Or is it more a case of, well, that's how it started, but it doesn't have to stay that way?
Everyone can change. It doesn't, like, if you're currently saying, no, I'm absolutely grand, like nothing wrong with me, no, I'm perfect, I'm grand, you're not. It's a red flag straight away. Yeah, you're not going to change.
That's what someone who's not perfect and grand would say.
But self-awareness is massive. So when you're completely aware of, okay, my thoughts need to change, right? I'm negatively thinking about myself all of the time. I'm negatively thinking about situations in my life. I'm not grateful. I'm not feeling grateful for what I have. My emotions are up and down daily. Like, you know, someone says something to me and I fly off the handle, right? So I'm triggered by certain things that people are saying to me. And then straight away off that, I'm holding on to what they've said to me all day, and my feelings are everywhere. I'm angry, frustrated, I'm feeling negative about the day, and then that just goes into the spiral. So first thing is, if you're aware of, okay, something needs to change here, that's brilliant, because you've already said, I need to change. If I'm speaking to someone, they're like, I'm absolutely grand, nothing wrong with me, it's, as you said, a red flag.
It's like 90% of young fellas down the pub.
Yeah, nothing needs to change here. But so that's, you can absolutely change your mindset once you have that self-awareness.
Right, so awareness is the first step, and then
on my first session with every client is awareness. We go into, okay, talk me through how your thoughts are, what your feelings are like how are you feeling currently, right? And they'll go deeply into, okay, well, I feel frustrated when this happens, or I feel angry when this happens, or I get sad quite a lot, or, you know, we would go deep into thoughts, feelings, emotions, because that's your emotional intelligence, right? So we would work on the emotional intelligence side of it. And then with emotional intelligence, you have to learn how to balance your emotions. So it's that balance. Then how do you remain focused when you have to remain focused? How do you take your foot off the pedal and have that self-care? And self-care isn't like a green smoothie and a face mask. It's actually just like looking after yourself on a daily basis with like small things. So yeah.
That's a really cool point you made about self-care, because you see it all the time online, and it's like self-care is, and it's doing all this nice stuff for yourself. But sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is do the hard shit that you don't want to do, and that can be self-care at times as well.
Absolutely, yeah. So like self-care can also be going to the gym and getting your training in when you know you don't want to, but you're doing it because it's going to better you in the long term, you know. That's why I have so much respect for athletes and fitness coaches, because like they're training, like they'd be training twice a day, sometimes like 3 times a day, like it's insane. So like learning how to balance your, you know, your day to day, so that it's not just training. It's like, okay, how can we implement that self-care for you as well? How can we actually take a breather, like implement visualization, implement breath work, meditation, to try and balance that out as well, because you have to have balance in life. If you don't have balance, you're going to feel unbalanced, you know.
This is more of a personal question, and it's probably more of like a question that I should like go back to counselling for, but I'd love to hear what your take on it is anyway. Because you were talking about like emotional intelligence and like recognizing your thoughts, and then like being able to like kind of like take them apart and like figure out where it's coming from. What about the situations, and I don't know if you've experienced it, but I'm sure you have, where like you don't know what's wrong, but you know you don't feel happy, and like you know that within you there's something negative and you feel stressed and anxious, but you can't pinpoint what's causing that?
I would straight away ask you what's happening in your environment right now that could be triggering those emotions within you. A lot of the times when we're feeling stressed and anxious and we don't know why, there's something in your environment that's triggering you. And it could be that you don't want to ask yourself the hard questions. If you're in a group with people who are out every weekend and they don't have the same goals and drive that you do, but you're surrounding yourself with these people, that's going to have you feeling quite stressed, but it's an unconscious stress. You don't know that you're feeling it, but you know there's something there. So we would break it down. So like that's why I always go to your life wheel. So one thing I do with clients is the life wheel. So we look at your personal life, your health and fitness, what do you do for fun? We look at different elements and we rate them between 1 and 10. Okay. Right? And then we rate the current environment 1 to 10, and where do you want that to be? And most people say 10, right?
Yeah, of course.
But we would look at, okay, what did you score below 5? And then if you've come back to me with, okay, my environment, my social life is like a 3, or, my friends and family is like a 3 or 4 or 5, we'd be like, okay, let's look at that first, and we go through every single point.
Okay.
Because that unconscious stress that we're feeling is because there's something in our life that we're not currently and deeply looking into. So that could be, are we running on the hamster wheel of life with, a career that we're just doing it for the sake of doing it? Or is our day-to-day feeling quite mundane? Are we just doing the same thing every day because we feel like we have to, because society taught us to? So it's really looking deeply within us, and it can be tough because, you have a drive or you want to get somewhere that your social circle doesn't have that same drive to want to get to. Or maybe they do, we don't know, but just they haven't hit that self-awareness yet. So that kind of anxiety and stress will be stemming from something that we haven't answered yet. And we just have to dig deeper to get to that answer.
Damn.
Do you think, is that digging, is it something that you can do alone, or do you think you need someone?
You just can hire me.
Discount code in the description.
I'm not trying to talk you out of work, by the
way. You can definitely do it on your own. So journaling, all my clients do journaling every day. They do their gratitude journaling every morning. They do their visualizations, but they do that deep work. So when I have sessions, I give them questions to ask themselves with their journal, and they would do that whenever they get a chance. It could be in the morning with their coffee, it could be in the evening, and then we would chat through those questions when they come back to me. So they're always reflecting and doing some of the in-between sessions with me. It's not just like, okay, see you next week or 2 weeks. You're always doing something to work on you. So the first thing I would say is journaling. And you can get guided journals as well, where the questions are in there. So it's not just like a blank page, where do I start? It's like the questions are in there. Nice. And I'm working on a product at the minute.
I was going to say that. Can I ask a question? Or maybe don't want to tell because maybe it's involved in the product. What would be your 3 favorite journaling questions for people to ask themselves?
Where do you want to be in 1 year's time? I'm not even going to say 5, because a lot of those questions are, where do you see yourself in 5 years time? A lot of people don't know. How can we just get you somewhere different to now in 12 months time? That'll be the first one. The second one would be, describe yourself in 3 words.
That's a tough one.
Yeah. And from that, you can pinpoint whether they're negative or positive words that you're using about yourself as well. And the third one would be, what makes you happy? What is it that would make you happy? And that could be something that you're currently doing, that could be something that you want to be doing. So I know they sound quite simple, but there's a lot within them. Because if you're asking yourself, well, what makes me happy? Some things, like what makes me happy is just like having like a couple of hours off on a Friday night and just being able to chill and watch a movie and kind of like, you know, be around the people that like I love, and you know, like being with the dogs as well. But you know, just like what makes you happy. And I think that's like a question that I feel like everyone should be asking themselves.
Yeah.
You know, you could learn a lot from asking yourself that question.
For sure. I feel like probably a lot of people relate as well. I'm in like a weird position where most of the things that make me happy also make me fat, which makes me unhappy.
That's negative thinking.
Well, what makes me happy? Like spice bags, ice creams, going to cinema.
Look, I like one thing I say to people is don't give up the stuff that you love. Right?
Yeah.
Like I love a spice bag.
Yeah.
Right? Cluck chickens on the side of the road. Like no, but like, you know, you get fitness coaches who are like, you have to give up everything.
Yeah.
Like I don't believe in that, right? Probably sound really harsh when I'm saying that, like, don't do this. But like some fitness coaches are like, no, you need to give that up solely. Like I did a fitness plan last summer, and I thought it was an incredible plan because it had a mix of, you could have your takeaway one night a week, you could implement your squares bar, your trail bar, whatever, into your plan. Coaches who do that, I agree with completely. Yeah. The coaches who are like, cut out absolutely everything. Like for if you can't expect to run a marathon tomorrow if you've never ran. So don't cut out absolutely everything. Like start very small. The small habits are so important. So if you want to make a change today, start with something very small. Yeah. Right? Just very small habits.
It's something you mentioned so many times. It's like start simple and start small, but people just want to skip that part and get to like the really complicated stuff, forget to the sex. It's like someone who's probably, I don't know, just use an example. I've never worked out, never gone to the gym before, and then they see a video of someone in like the CrossFit Games or something like, that's what I want to do. That. And they'd like just go for a walk, you know, like take it easy. But they want to like skip the basics, and because they almost jump in the deep end right away, that reinforces, I can't do this, I'm not good enough. Yeah. And then they quit or give up, and then it just keeps this loop going. So you're big on actually just start where you are, like the next
literally start step. Where you are. Like it's not just like, okay, I need to change absolutely everything, because you're going to overwhelm yourself. Like you're going to get so stressed, you're going to be overwhelmed, and it's not going to be sustainable. It's not going to last. So if you start with a small thing, right? If you feel like I need to get a bit more exercise in, grand, up your steps a bit more every day. Get up that bit earlier in the morning, get out for that sunlight, right? Include maybe, if you, like with one thing I do, which is part of self-care for me, is I love walking down to Apple Green and grabbing a coffee, right? So I'll get my steps in, I'll grab my coffee and I'll walk back. They have a lovely coffee, by the way. Yeah, they really do.
Is it, what's the brand of coffee? Is it Bray?
Oh, I call it Brayburn or something, Brewburn. Yeah. They're really nice. But yeah, I think I've sold their coffee to so many people now. Literally, like I would get my steps in, I walk down to Apple Green, grab my coffee, walk back, and that's one thing I do. Like most days, I don't do it every day. Like I wouldn't buy a coffee every day, but it's just the simple things like that is just what's going to get you from where you are now to where you want to be. Mm-hmm. Implement that, you know, create a habit out of that, because it takes over 6 to 6 days to form a habit that's going to last for you. So if you implement that first, then stack that habit. So do habit stacking. So include maybe another 2K steps in your walk every day. Grand, got that. Get up that bit earlier in the morning. Grand, got that. Like if you're not a morning person and you find that you get up at like 8:30 every morning, but you want to start getting up at like 6 a.m. It's not going to work. You're going to feel exhausted by the time the end of the week comes, and it's not going to last. Get up at around 8:15. Get up just 15 minutes early starting off. And then once you've got that down, then you can start getting up at 8. So like small little tweaks to what you do on a daily basis is what's going to last for you.
Beautiful. It's so simple, so basic, but
yeah, it's so simple. It sounds like it doesn't work.
Yeah, exactly.
It works.
It does. We can all attest to it. You mentioned, and I'm not asking you to give away all the secrets here, Martha, but you mentioned the first step is awareness. So let's say someone's got some awareness, whether it's through journaling or through some work. Yeah. What would be the next thing you'd look at then?
Right. So they've come to me. They've figured out, right, this is the change I need to make. I spend the first month with my clients. So with my program, so I've got a program that I do with athletes. I've got a program that I do with business owners and high performers. So the first month we always have a session every week, because I have to get to know them. They have to get to know me. Mm-hmm. I have to get to know them on a really deep level. So having that massive gap. So for month 2, 3 and 4 of my program, it's a 4-month program, we have sessions every 2 weeks. But with athletes, because of camps, we would extend them out, or we do month to month. So it's a bit different. So let's say we're looking at the 4-month program, 1 session a week, because I need to get to know them, they need to get to know me, and I need to get to know them on a really deep level. So I would always ask the really deep questions. Sometimes I might find that they struggle with boundaries, right? So setting those boundaries, how to say no to somebody, right? So you might find you're going around in circles because you don't know how to say no to someone. Maybe your friends are like peer pressuring you into wanting to go out the weekend, but you know that you don't want to really go out and binge drink anymore, right? You're focusing on another part of your career, right? You're working towards your fight or whatever, you know, like it's how to get to know that client on an extremely deep level. And that's where I'd start with the deeper questions. And when someone has become aware of the change that they need to make and they've come to me, already at that point they're open to that change. So they're like, right, I'm ready to change. Ask me what you need to ask me. And everyone I've worked with has been so open. And like, I'm so grateful with that as well, because like, you know, they've built that trust with me. You know, I feel like the clients that I work with, like, they are relentless. They have so much discipline. Like, they're ready to like literally take on the world, like, and I love it. I love seeing it as well. But yeah.
Nice. And I'm asking you this because my mom actually asked me this question earlier on. I was telling her a bit about you and the work you do. Do you work with normal people, as she would call them, like Gen Pop, or is it mainly athletes and business owners that you work with?
I work with everybody. Yeah, everybody. The reason why I would focus solely on athletes and, you know, business owners, and I say high performers, but everyone is a high performer. Like when you've decided to make a change and you're like, right, I need to make a change, that's you wanting to reach that peak high performance for yourself. So if that answers your question, that I do work with everybody, because everybody who is like, I want to make a change, I don't want to be in the situation I'm in right now, how can I get off the hamster wheel and start going in a different direction? Right, well, we need to do the deeper work. And your perspective, like how you perceive yourself, is so important. And another thing is, a lot of people worry about what other people think, right? So they don't want to make that change because they're so worried Mary down the road is going to be saying something about me, like, people are going to perceive you exactly how they're going to perceive you. And a lot of the time, if you flip your mindset, a lot of the time a change that you're making in your life is motivating and bringing up something in someone else. So although they might be coming across like they've got an opinion of you, or they're questioning you in some way, all you're doing is highlighting something in them where they might feel like, oh, that's something I'd love to do. And a lot of people take it as like a negative. They're like, oh, they're judging me. But really, it's bringing up a motivator in them.
Yeah, I get you. I used to hear it a lot when I worked with fitness clients, like they'd want to change their eating habits, and then their partner or someone else would pass comments that are kind of like negative on the surface, but when you look beyond it, it's nothing really got to do. It's nothing got to do with you or what you're doing. It's stuff within them. Yeah,
and like, look after your mind as best you can, because it is going to serve you so much in the future, you know. And like with fitness and everything, like you're putting so much like athletes and fitness coaches and like everyone who trains like a lot every week, you're putting so much I suppose like you're using so much energy, your physical self. Like if you look after your mind, you train the mind, like you can forget to train the mind because you're training so much on the body. If you train both simultaneously, like that's massive. Like you're going to get so far. And you know, your mind's going to burn out before your body does as well.
Yeah.
So if you train that, you're going to avoid the burnout.
We were chatting about burnout just before.
Yeah, literally before
so
we
it's
came
funny
in.
you bring that up. Talk to us a little bit about burnout, because I know you made the point to me out there, like no one gets away in life without experiencing burnout. Like we all go through it at different phases. Like
it depends what situation you're in. Like, you know, we can come across situations that we weren't prepared for. And like we can be in a job where we're like, you know, going through the motions, going through the, you know, like it can be quite a pressurizing environment, you know, like we've all gone through pressurizing environments in our life. And if we don't face that and we allow it to just continue on and on and on, eventually your body's going to give up. You're going to find that your immune system is going to dip. You're going to find you're getting flus and colds all of the time. You know, your body will start to show those symptoms first, and then eventually you'll start getting headaches because your mind is just racing all of the time, but your mind's not processing your thoughts because there's so many of them. And that's where the burnout comes in. So if you look after yourself, if you're like, okay, like manage your time, like time management, productivity, like different tools and techniques that you can use to manage your day better, you're going to find that you'll avoid that burnout. Because if you're in a quite a high pressurizing job environment and you know that you've got multiple meetings a day or you've got multiple tasks that you need to get done, do the deep work, which would be, so I always chat to clients about like deep work and kind of doing 45 minutes and taking a break, 45 minutes taking a break. If you continue on doing that for like 3-4 hours and you're staring at a screen, you're exhausted. But then you'll also find that in between doing your, what you might think is deep work, you're picking up your phone halfway through and you're scrolling while you're doing it, or else you're putting the earphones in, you're listening to music while you're doing it. You're not really involved in, you're not really deep into the work. So that's where the phone kind of comes in. It's like you're kind of picking up for that dopamine hit, right? You're like, I'm just going to start scrolling, right? So you're not deep in the work, and then that task that might have only like could have taken you an hour has now taken you 3. You know.
Oh man, that's just like my life in a nutshell. And then like you're halfway, like you're probably 5 minutes into scrolling, like why did I even pick this up?
So that's the doom scrolling. It's like you're just scrolling and scrolling. Your eyes are crossed at this point. So.
Oh, for real. If you don't mind jumping into a slightly different line, stress and anxiety were 2 big topics I wanted to talk to you about today. A, because I don't really understand them, and B, because I, along with most people, experience them. And most of the time, I don't know which one of the 2 I'm feeling. I just know it's one of them. So if you can, could you explain what is stress, what is anxiety, how do you know which one you're feeling, and what's the kind of tools or like practices you can bring into your day-to-day life or whatever to try combat them?
So with stress, it's short term. So stress is short term, anxiety is long term. So it's something that's lingering. So there's different types of anxiety disorders. You can have generalized anxiety disorder, which is a consistent worry about everything. With stress, everyone can feel stressed about like a situation that's happening currently. The moment that situation is resolved is when you'll start to feel that you're like, it's like a weight is lifted. You're like, oh, okay. And then the stress is gone. But if you're struggling with anxiety, you'll notice that anxiety will transfer onto another worry. So you'll straight away start worrying about something else, right? And you'll know yourself, like, you know, what your current situation is, what were you feeling stressed about, what were you feeling anxious about, and then you'll notice that has now transferred onto something else. So the difference between the 2 is that stress is short term and anxiety is long term.
Yeah. Does it feel like, for example, you know when you're feeling hungry versus when you need to go toilet? Like in your body, they're 2 completely different feelings. Are stress and anxiety, do they feel the same?
No. So with stress and anxiety, you'll still get, like, you'll start to feel like you're sweating, you're feeling quite overwhelmed, you'll feel like a racing heartbeat. It's the same symptoms. You'll feel kind of like pins and needles almost in your hands and feet, because like that's just your nervous system is on overdrive. Your nervous system is literally like taken off because it's like, okay, something's happening here, right? And that's your fight or flight coming in, right? So our fight or flight takes place in our amygdala in our brain. So that's where that's stored. So you'll either deal with the situation or you'll leg it, right? So if you're saying, right, I'm going to deal with this, right, your nervous system has to catch up with you. Like, you have to actually put focus on it. You can't avoid it anymore, right? And some people avoid the stress that's coming with a situation. Other people are like, I'm going to battle this head on, right? And that's the difference with how you handle situations. Do you run from them or do you deal with them? And that's the difference between the 2.
Nice.
I hope that answers your
question.
No,
it does. I almost forget my original question now. What's the difference between the 2?
Yeah, and then what do you do? Like, what's the the tips?
How do we combat
that? So there's a couple of things you can do with CBT. I use mood boards. So that can be where I'll get a client to write out what's the thought. So if it's a thought, if it's an irrational thought, if it's something that's currently happening in your environment, write that out, right? What's happening? Where did it happen? Who was there, right? And then I'll get them to rate their mood. So what was your feeling and emotion around that? Were you angry? Were you sad? Were you frustrated? And then rate your mood. So out of 1 to 100%, what was your mood? Was it 80%? Like, was it 90% based on the emotion that you put down? And then we just try and dissect the issue. And then we go to, okay, so your mood around the people that were there were the people that trigger. So we go backwards, then we look at, okay, the people that were around you, like who said what to you, what, like if someone said something to you, did that set you off, right? What was the trigger there? And then we look at your relationship with them. That can be anything, that can be a work environment, that can be a friends, family environment, anything. So we would look at that. With other tools that I use with clients, it's questions that I'd ask them as well. So those deeper questions, like we have to dissect the thought that you're having. We have to try and rationalize the thoughts as well. So if it's an irrational thought, so you're getting worried over things that haven't actually happened, how can we control and manage the fear about something that hasn't happened yet? Like what's the worst that could happen if it was to happen? So questions like that, it's like, okay, if that was to happen, how are you going to deal with that? Right? And get you feeling comfortable with if that was going to happen. So being comfortable with what ifs. Okay, well, what if that person says that to me? What's the worst that can happen? What if,
There's
I don't
no
know, like,
parking
yeah,
out
like
there
it's
later
just, you could go on with them. It's like multiple what ifs, but being so comfortable with not having full control over the world, but having full control over yourself. That's massive. You can't control the world, but you can control yourself.
Love it.
Powerful.
Love it, yeah. Can I ask you while we're on the topic of anxiety, and I'm cautious of not saying something too controversial or anything.
I feel like I've said multiple controversial things in this whole thing.
True. But is there a difference between the normal everyday anxiety that everyone feels and you're not broken if you feel it, and the anxiety that's maybe some hormonal imbalance that needs to be treated with, like, I don't know, medications? The reason why I'm asking is because I feel like we're kind of at a stage in the world or society where anxiety can be used almost as like a get out of jail card, or like, oh, I can't do this because it makes me anxious, or oh, I feel anxiety around this thing, and they almost use that as a reason, like, not to do the thing that they actually need to do to get over the anxiety. And so it's like they put this wall up and use anxiety as the excuse to why I don't want to do it, when in reality the only way they'll ever get past it is by saying, okay, I feel anxious about this, that's okay, it's normal, but I still need to just go and get it done anyways.
Yeah, I feel like my answer to that is going to be controversial now as well.
Please do.
A bit of anxiety is good for everyone, because if you weren't feeling, let's say you had to go and do public speaking, right? Right, you have to talk in front of like your whole work team or 100 people or whatever event you're doing, right? If you didn't feel nervous about that and you felt numb, then you're not really passionate about it. Like you feel passionate about something. Like if you're feeling that nerves before you get up and speak in front of people, you're passionate about what you're doing. If you feel numb and you're like, ugh, like this, no, I don't feel, and when I'm doing this, you're not. It feels mundane. You're not passionate about what you're doing. Everyone has a bit of anxiety. That's that nerves. That's that kind of, you know, where you're feeling a bit jittery and you're kind of like, you know, butterflies in your stomach, all that sort of stuff. But when the anxiety consumes you completely, I like with coaching, like if I have a client who I feel, you know, they need deeper work, like deeper therapy, I would refer them to a therapist. Because that's when there had to be another intervention. That's when they would need the deeper work there.
No, big time. Because even see it with like parents and kids, sometimes like, oh, you know, I don't know, they won't send their kid to do some after school thing because the kid is saying, oh, they're nervous about going into it. It's like, I get it, but at the same time, if you don't put them in those environments where they actually feel like I can be nervous about something and still do it and it doesn't kill me, and you know, I make friends and do this, like if they get at that young age, even like if that's the message that gets put to them, it's like by the time they become adults, they're going to be completely resistant to anything that's going to be nervous.
You can't keep your kids in a bubble. You have to push them out of their comfort zone, because that's where they're going to make mistakes, learn from the mistakes, and they're going to develop that mental resilience that they're going to need throughout their whole life. If you put them in bubble wrap and you protect them, and then they're put out in front of the world and you're not always there, how are they to face those situations?
They're not equipped to deal with it,
Exactly. Yeah.
It's sad, but
Yeah.
unfortunate. You got any more questions?
Oh, loads. I just didn't want to jump in.
Yeah, come on.
Are we allowed to do like not role players, but can I throw scenarios at you and do you give me some advice?
Go for it. I'll
Yeah.
see how equipped I am.
We've done it with was it Paul Merriman?
He was green light, red light stuff.
Yeah, I think we done something else as well, but it was like basically we did because it was like, if I was 20 years old and I wanted to get a mortgage, what should I be doing and stuff like that. So similar kind of thing, but in a mindset perspective. All right, say I'm somebody who feels completely lost in life. I don't know what direction my life is heading, and all of it feels very overwhelming, and I don't really see my purpose here on earth, whatever it might be, and I'm just caught in this this negative self-fulfilling prophecy of I'm not good at anything, blah blah blah. What's a good place for me to start trying to get out of there?
What do you enjoy doing right now? What's your favorite thing? If you were to pick one thing that you love doing, what would it be?
Going cinema.
I didn't think this far into the role play. Okay, let me say going to the beach.
Okay. I wasn't expecting that answer.
Wrong answer.
No, I'm only
Pick something
joking.
else.
No, I'm only joking. I suppose the first thing I would say is if there was nothing, if you were to block out everything that's happening in your life currently, right, and it was just you on your own, what would you, Lee, love to be doing? Right? Don't think of anyone else. Just what would you love to be doing with your life?
Podcasting.
Okay. There you go. That's what you should be doing. So what's like, I know obviously you guys are doing it right now, but like the question, what I mean is like if someone came to me and was like, I don't know what I'm doing, like I'm feeling quite overwhelmed, I'm feeling quite stressed, I'm feeling anxious all the time, I'm running on this hamster wheel in my career, I'm socialising with people that, you know, they don't have the same values and kind of beliefs that I do, like what should I be doing? And we'd look at, well, if you were to just take yourself out of that and just put yourself here for a moment, what would you want to be doing? Because we think of other people's perspectives of us, we think of other people's opinions, and we base every next step and decision that we're going to make off of other people. So the first thing is, I like to take them completely out of where their environment is and say, do not think about anyone else. What do you want to be doing? Because it's mad, the amount of people who actually focus solely on what other people think of them and what other people's perception of them is. They will make their next decision based on their values and beliefs over them. Completely.
Damn. Well, I assume, even just when you said that to me, they're like, podcasting, that's what you should be doing. Straight away, I go to the limiting beliefs of, there's no money in that. How am I going to be able to afford to do that? How am I going to get a mortgage? Do that, like, straight away to all the, like, negative stuff.
But, like, and you don't need to throw this into the podcast if you don't want to, but, like, what would be stopping you from making, like, what's stopping you guys from making that a big thing? Just because, if you feel like no one else has done it, like, why can't you guys do it?
Yeah.
You know?
Probably just because I don't know anyone else who has done it, so exactly, I don't see what the path is.
Always be the first. Like, just forget about everyone else. Just, like, literally, you're on this path towards where you guys want to go, and you're smashing it. So, like, just keep going in that direction. Don't look at anyone else. Like, I know we always look up to people, you know, that way. But, like, look at Stephen Bartlett. Look at, like, you know, Joe Rogan. Why can't you just do all, you know, do that?
You shave the head.
Yeah.
Okay. Second role play. This time we'll focus more on, say I'm somebody, right, and I'm really insecure. Like, I don't like how I look. I feel like every time I walk into a room, people are looking at me, judging me. Everything I wear doesn't suit me right. Everyone looks better than me. And for some reason, I just have this extremely negative self-image. How do I start knocking down the bricks on that wall?
If you can think back to a time when you first felt like someone said something that was negative to you, what age would you have been when that happened?
6.
And can you remember it like a core belief, like that's like deep within you, like you can remember every aspect of it?
It's in role play mode, but let's say for the sake of that, let's say I have a specific memory of when I was 6 years old, and there was something. I was in a skill play, And I came out and somebody was like, who's that fat kid? And ever since then, I just hate the way I look and I feel like I'm fat.
You've held on to that belief for such a long time that your whole perception of yourself is based around that one moment. So your whole life now up to this point is using your words like, I'm that fat kid on stage, age 6, and I'm always going to be like that. Right? So you're like, your core belief now is that moment. So we would look at switching your mindset to being kinder to yourself, because straight away as a child that negative self-talk came in and you held on to that all throughout your life. So we would look at breaking that belief and how can we switch it to be more positive.
Nice. Is that still, if I didn't, or the person didn't have like a clear memory the first time, can you still do that work without knowing what the initial thing was? Yeah,
absolutely. Because like, I suppose if you, like in school, like people, we would have always gone through situations where our confidence was knocked. Like maybe a teacher said something or someone in our class said something. There's always something, because as a kid, kids are like sponges.
Yeah.
Like we absorb everything. And we would hold on to things that maybe now we'd let go over our heads. But we would still be holding on to things from back then. And we would still bring them into our lives today and think that that's a true thing that happened to me. Like that's like what they said to me is so true. We would just hold on to it. So we need to break that belief, understand that it happened. We can't control, like we can't change the past, but we can control our thoughts now and our future. So how can we break that? How can we make switch our mindset up to be more positive, kinder to ourselves? You know, our brain straight away is wired to jump to the negative before it jumps to the positive. So even when you wake up in the morning, you're also like wired to live in the past. So when you wake up in the morning, you're still thinking about yesterday. You're not thinking about the day ahead. Like your very first thought is something that happened yesterday. Even if you're not consciously aware of it, your unconscious thoughts are still in yesterday. So when you're changing your belief system to be more positive, you have to do so much more deeper work because your brain is naturally wired to be negative. You're always going to be focusing on the negatives. Like, if you notice that a lot of people will focus on the negative core beliefs rather than the positive core beliefs because you're holding on to the negatives about yourself rather than focusing on any positives.
I'll actually share something personal there because that struck something for me when you mentioned about how as kids, and as a kid it could be like, I wasn't talking about you with the fat kid thing, right? Yes, that wasn't the real story.
I wasn't even fat. I just had a big dinner that day.
But as you were saying, like with kids, they can absorb everything, and it can be like some of the most mundane things that a parent says or a teacher says or doesn't say at certain moments that sticks with them. And something that I get asked a lot is I start training, like lifting weights and going to the gym when I was like 12 or 13, so like really young. And part of it was for football and for sports and performance, but I think a big part of it for me was as a kid just a feeling of like powerlessness, like you couldn't defend yourself. And like we weren't abused or anything as kids, but you know, moments where your mom and dad might give you a slap or something like that, you know, and that feeling that stuck with me of I physically can't defend myself in those moments because obviously you're a kid and you're small and you can't do anything about it. And I'm sure for me that was a big driver in terms of like, well, if I can't defend myself, if I can go to the gym and get stronger, maybe that's something that I could use, or maybe I'll look like someone who can defend themselves so they'll be less likely to. And like little things like that can set your life down a certain direction or down a certain course. And I'd always say, maybe not like publicly necessarily, but say like, I think kids or people who are about to have kids, about to become parents, should go to some form of like counselling or do some mindset work before the kids are born, because you don't know how little triggers that you can carry through them will be passed on to the kids in ways you probably don't even understand, and then God knows what impact that has on the kids for the rest of their lives.
It can be generational.
Yeah.
You know, without realising it, you know, like it's part of life. You know, you grow up, you have kids, and your kids have kids, and it goes on. And without realising it, you could have been carrying stress or overwhelm or kind of like just worries, right? That, you know, little things that your kids might pick up on. Do you know what I mean? So, yeah, like that kind of, I suppose, protective, you're kind of talking about that protective barrier.
Yeah.
It's to be kind of fierce and tough you know, like wanting to, it's putting that wall up for you, because, you know, maybe you felt more protected wanted to do that, you know.
Big time. I just thought it was interesting as a
Yeah. My question is kind of trying to take a negative, or not negative spin, trying to take a positive spin on what we've been talking about, because we spent a lot of time talking about what a negative mindset looks like. Obviously, in an ideal world, we could be happy every single moment of every single day and not worry about anything, but that's not really the way life works. But if you had to describe what a healthy mindset would look like, taking into account the fact that ups and downs are part of life, what would that healthy mindset be?
Implementing small habits, you know, being self-aware, you know, like being a healthy mindset, someone who's aware of them solely, you know, like what their triggers are, what their thoughts are, what their feelings are, what pushes them over the edge, what do they, you know, what do they deem as disrespect, what boundaries do they have in place, someone who's completely aware of themselves and what they need in their life, what they don't have, how they can bridge that gap. If you're completely unaware that there's anything like in your life now that doesn't need to change, I would deem that an unhealthy mindset, because everyone can change something, always. And if you think I'm absolutely perfect, nothing wrong with me, I'm grand, again, like, you know, it's everyone has a part of them that they can change to be positive.
Yeah. Nice. Do you have any more questions, Em?
I do, and it's probably a tough one to answer.
You go. I'll follow up then after.
Yeah, because and I don't want to put you in a position to like name a name necessarily, but it's easy from a physical perspective to look at people and say, oh, that's what an ideal body could look like. Like, for example, you might look at a bodybuilder and be like, oh, you know, like that's the North Star that you should aim towards. Like, look like that. That's what a great body looks like. With mindset, obviously, there's no physical necessarily element to it. It's more like internal. But is there anyone who you look at, or anyone who you look up to and say, like, that's someone who I think has a great mindset, or someone whose mindset you could aspire to model, or not copy, because everyone's going to be different, but like is a good example of like that's what a healthy mindset looks like? I know it's nearly impossible to answer because like you don't know everything.
It's a difficult question, because there would be a handful of people who I'd like to take elements of their mindset and mold it into one. Right? So there's not one specific person. Gary Brecka would be one. Okay. Stephen Bartlett. There'd be two. It just wouldn't be one person solely, because I feel like everyone has elements that they can change.
Yes, yeah.
So to pick kind of one person, I don't feel like I right now want to kind of, I'd love to be them.
Yes,
because there's elements of them that they would want to change about themselves too. So once you're completely happy in yourself and you perceive yourself in a positive light and you remain true to yourself, I always say that, like, always remain true to yourself, because, you know, if you don't, like, actually, sorry, on that point, one thing is that with athletes, I always say remain true to yourself, because if you put on a persona and then, you know, it's D-Day, right? And fight day comes, match day, whichever, right? That persona that you've put on will consume you to a point where you feel like you have to act a certain way for everyone else outside the box. If you remain completely true to yourself, you don't even need to think about any of that. You've completely remained who you are the whole way through the process.
Kind of like, and this is completely like less significant than what you said, but do you know the whole like wear the same clothes every day, so you've one less decision to make? It's like if you just stay true to yourself, it's one less thing you have to be conscious of, or like trying to please somebody else or trying to act a certain way to meet somebody else's standards. Yeah,
because like if you always remain who you are and you don't try to be anybody else, right? And it's going back to your question. It's like, there's things that people know, like Gary Brecka being a sleep expert, like that'd be class. And then like Stephen Bartlett with like the amount of knowledge he's gained throughout his entrepreneurial journey and like interviewing so many people, like that's class as well. But once you're so happy within yourself, like you can learn from those people, absolutely. But there's no one person that I would strive to want to be like. It's like I see different elements of people. I'm like, oh, that's cool, you know. But if you fall into this deep rabbit hole of, oh, I just want to be like them, and like you try to change every element of yourself to be like them, like what's wrong with you? You know, like why aren't you happy with you? How can we, you know, change you to like mold you to be more the person that you would like to be, but not totally change. Like you are who you are, you know. And like there's people out there who might be like, oh, I'd love to be like you. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like everyone kind of has these thoughts as well. So just always remain true to yourself.
Nice. I have one more question.
Over it.
Actually, I'm intrigued to hear your answer. So we spoke, obviously we had Shauna on the podcast. You worked with Shauna. She was big on the idea of visualization and mantras. Her mantra was my best is the best in the world.
Yeah.
We had Molly on when we were over in Liverpool. She had her own mantra, which was much longer, and I'm not going to try and repeat it, but it meant a lot to her, and you could tell when she spoke about it, it struck a chord very deep. First question, do you have a mantra? And second question, when it comes to developing a mantra, is it you just sit down and write something out until it feels right, or like do you have to reach within a certain part of you to try and figure out what your mantra should be?
Your mantra should be something that is very relevant to who you are and where you want to be, and should come deep within you. Mine is every day and every way I'm getting better and better and better, and that's because every day I am getting better and better and better. I'm doing something that's bringing me closer to where I want to be. I'm happy within myself, like, you know, I'm always learning something. Like I'm always learning about like my entrepreneurial journey, you know, people I'm working with, like how I can better my business, how I can, you know, implement more habits and things into my life. But every day I'm getting better. And like I can't, like when I started this journey with the coaching, it's like I set up my business from scratch and I had to learn all about Instagram, TikTok, and like I was terrified putting out my first reel. Like I was like, what are people going to be thinking about this? And that straight away, that's thinking other people's opinions and perception of me was holding me back from wanting to put myself out there. So I just had to literally bite the bullet, and now I'm putting them out all the time. So it's like every day you're learning, every day you're doing something that's bringing you closer to where you want to be. But just like always remain true to who you are. Don't try and change and be like someone else, because the moment you try to do that, you're losing kind of focus. You know, you're so focused on trying to please everybody else that you're not focused on you and where you want to go.
Yeah, I don't know if you have a question, Adam, but I just wanted to say, Martha Donnelly, you're the shit. I say, like, not to sound like some outflow or whatever, but like we're just so impressed with
outflow down the pub.
Yeah, like honestly, I'm so impressed with how you answered all those questions and the way you were able to like just run, like, because obviously we sent over some questions beforehand, but most of the questions were just kind of off the cuff, and the way you were able to not only give an answer that made sense, but like apply some real world logic or like some experience to it and explain these concepts in a way that someone like myself and Adam, who would have considered ourselves like somewhat self-aware beforehand, but even like the amount that I gained just from sitting here listening to you, yeah, I've been so impressed. So thank you so much for all of that.
Where can people find out more about you, Martha, or get in touch if they want to get even more help?
So my Instagram is Mindset with Martha. My TikTok is Mindset with Martha. So anything Mindset with Martha related, you'll find me.
Trademarked, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, happy to chat to anyone who wants to reach out.
Beautiful.
Martha, thank you for your time.
Thank you so much, lads.